If you ever want to know what it feels like to die, just sit in the snow for 6 hours without moving a muscle. Your blood stops being liquid. It turns into something thick, like cold syrup. It stops reaching your fingers. It stops reaching your toes. And then the sleep comes. It's a beautiful sleep. It's warm and it's inviting, and it's the most dangerous thing in the world. I was laying there, under the roots of a shattered pine tree, and my eyes were closing. I could feel my heart slowing down. Thud. Long pause. Thud. I knew if I closed my eyes for 10 seconds, I'd never open them again. So I reached out my hand. My fingers didn't even feel like mine anymore. They felt like wooden sticks. And I grabbed a handful of that gray frozen slush. I shoved it into my mouth. I didn't chew. I just let the ice burn against the roof of my mouth, let the freezing meltwater run down my throat like a razor blade. The shock, it hit my brain like a physical punch. My eyes snapped open. I was awake. I was alive, and I was still being hunted. You kids today, you see the movies, you see the maps, you see the Colmar Pocket, January 1945. It's just a shape on a piece of paper to you, but to me, it's a smell. It's the smell of wet wool that never dries. It's the smell of diesel exhaust hanging in the frozen air because the wind died down. It's the smell of a man who hasn't changed his socks in 3 weeks. That winter, God, it was the coldest one in 50 years. The Rhine plain was just a flat, white sheet of hell. My platoon was pinned down in a cluster of ruined farmhouses near a village. I think it was Ilhusern, or maybe it was further south. Everything looked the same when it was covered in 2 feet of snow and mortar craters. We had a German out there. Not just some kid with a Mauser, but a professional. A ghost. He'd taken out our radio operator on Tuesday. No, it was Monday. Monday morning. The kid didn't even have his boots laced yet. Then he got Lieutenant Miller. Just a small, neat hole in the center of a green helmet. We couldn't even see the muzzle flash. The kraut was good. He was patient. Captain Graves looked at me. I was the marksman. That's what they called me because I could hit a tin can at 300 yards back in Kentucky. He didn't give me a long speech. He just pointed toward the tree line, maybe 500 yards out. Find him, Joe, or we're all going to end up like Miller. I didn't have a white winter camo suit. We didn't have anything in Colmar, so I went into a cellar of a burnt-out house and found some old yellowed bedsheets. I tore them into strips. I wrapped my rifle, my Springfield M1903, until it looked like a bundle of laundry. I wrapped myself. I looked like a ghost, which was fitting, because I felt like I was already dead. I started crawling at 3 a.m. Have you ever tried to move without making a sound in frozen snow? Every time you put your weight down, the crust breaks. Crunch. It sounds like a gunshot in the middle of the night. I had to move an inch at a time, push with the toes, slide the belly, wait, listen. I spent 2 hours just crossing a ditch. My breath was a problem. Every time I exhaled, a cloud of white vapor would rise up. It was like a signal fire saying, "Here I am. Kill me." I had to wrap a wool scarf around my face and breathe through it, but then the moisture from my breath would freeze the wool to my skin. By the time I reached the fallen pine tree near the edge of the woods, my face was masked in ice. I settled in under the roots. The dirt was frozen hard as concrete. I didn't dare move to get comfortable. I just lay there, looking through the scope. The world was nothing but shades of white and gray. My feet. They stopped hurting after the 3rd hour. That's the scary part. When the pain stops, the rot starts. I kept thinking about my mother's kitchen, the smell of frying bacon, the heat from the stove. I could almost feel it. That's how the mind tricks you when you're freezing. It gives you what you want, so you'll let go. That's when I almost went under. The fatigue. It's a heavy blanket. My chin hit the stock of the rifle. My eyes drifted. I was dreaming of home. And then I felt that sudden, terrifying silence of the woods. I woke up just enough to realize I was dying. That's when I ate the snow. The pain of the cold hitting my stomach. It brought the world back into sharp, ugly focus. I stared through that glass lens until my eyes burned. And then, I saw it. About 400 yards away, there was a heavy branch on a fir tree. It was loaded with snow. Suddenly, a clump of that snow fell. There was no wind, not a breath of it. Something had bumped that branch. I focused. I didn't look for a man. You don't look for a man. You look for a shape that isn't quite right. I saw a shadow. It was a sliver of dark gray against the white. It was deep inside the branches. He was clever. He wasn't on the edge. He was tucked back. But he had to move his head to check his own scope. I felt my heart racing. I told it to shut up. I needed to be still. I had to take my right glove off. If I pulled the trigger with a thick wool glove, I wouldn't feel the break. I jerked the shot. I pulled my hand out. The air hit my bare skin, and it felt like I dipped my hand in boiling oil. I touched the trigger guard. The metal was so cold that my skin stuck to it. I felt the skin on my index finger tear just a little bit, sticking to the steel. I didn't care. I didn't think about him as a person. I couldn't. If I thought about him having a mother or a wife or a favorite song, I'd shake. I just thought about the windage. The breeze was coming from the left, maybe 5 miles per hour. Not much, but enough to drift the bullet 3 inches at that range. I took a breath. Half out. Hold it. The world shrank. There was no Colmar. There was no war. There was just the crosshair and that sliver of gray shadow. I squeezed. I didn't pull. I squeezed like I was holding a bird's egg and didn't want to break it. Crack. The Springfield kicked into my shoulder. In that cold air, the sound was incredibly loud. I didn't see him fall. I just saw the shadow slump. A second later, a rifle slid out from the branches and fell into the snow below. Then a heavy dark shape followed it, tumbling through the limbs like a broken doll. He hit the ground and didn't move. A red stain started to spread on the white powder. It looked like spilled wine. I didn't move. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run back to the farmhouse and jump into a fire. But I stayed. I stayed for another 2 hours. In this business, if there's one, there might be two. If I stood up, his partner would put a bullet in my ribs before I could take a step. So I lay there. I watched the blood on the snow go from bright red to a dark, crusty brown as it froze. I watched the wind slowly start to blow again, dusting his body with a fresh layer of white. It was like the earth was trying to hide what I'd done. When I finally crawled back, it took me 3 more hours. I couldn't use my feet. I had to drag myself by my elbows. When I got inside our lines, a medic had to cut my boots off. My toes were black. They said I'd lose them. I didn't. I got lucky. They just hurt every time it rains now. A little reminder from the Colmar Pocket. The captain gave me a cigarette. I couldn't even hold it. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it in the mud. I looked at that cigarette lying there, and I started to cry. Not because I was sad. Not because I'd killed a man. I cried because the cigarette was ruined, and it felt like the most tragic thing in the whole world. That's what war does to your head. It breaks the scales. A man's life is nothing but a dropped cigarette. That's a catastrophe. I'm 93 now. Most of my friends are gone. My wife's been gone 20 years. People ask me what I remember most. They expect me to talk about the medals or the day we crossed the Rhine, but I don't. I remember the taste of that snow. Dirty, metallic, freezing snow. Whenever I eat a bowl of ice cream, or I see the frost on the window in December. I'm back there, under those roots, holding my breath, waiting to see who dies first. You think you know what you're made of, don't you? You think you'd be the one to stay awake. You think you'd be the hero. But you don't know. You don't know until the cold starts singing to you, telling you to just close your eyes and go to sleep. You don't know until you have to choose between a mouthful of ice and a bullet in the brain. I chose the ice. I'm still not sure if I made the right call. Sometimes, in the middle of the night when the house is quiet and the heater is humming, I can still feel that German's eyes on me through the trees. And I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for me to finally fall asleep.